Imagine a ruler who was so incredibly powerful that even 1,000 years later, historians were still absolutely terrified of her.
Yeah, terrified is definitely the right word.
Right. I mean, she's simultaneously remembered as this bloodthirsty tyrant who supposedly murdered her own baby, but also as a populist visionary who smashed an ancient aristocracy.
Oh, and a living Buddha incarnate. Don't forget that one.
Exactly. So for you listening, you are looking at a historical landscape here that is deliberately murky, it's heavily redacted, and honestly, it's designed to make you hate her.
Completely. I mean, the historiographical waters surrounding this era are they are completely poisoned. We are looking at a figure whose very existence shattered the fundamental rules of her society.
Yeah.
And the men who wrote her history, they just could not allow her story to be told objectively.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are exploring the life of Wu Zetian, the only Orthodox female emperor in China's thousands of years of imperial history.
That's right.
And our mission today is really to just strip away the centuries of soap opera drama. We want to cut through the heavy layers of political propaganda and this deeply ingrained female disaster ideology that the ancient historians had.
Yeah, we have this massive stack of historical analyses, including some really groundbreaking work from modern historians, to finally uncover the factual reality of her reign. Because the sources we have are heavily biased.
Heavily.
Like they were written largely by the ideological descendants of the men she usurped. So we're going to be debunking some of the darkest myths surrounding her.
Including the infamous murder of her daughter, right?
Exactly. We'll get into that. And we are going to explore her profound impact on dismantling the centuries-old Guanlong aristocracy through the civil service exams.
Just huge.
Massive. And we'll completely re-examine her complex, heavily misunderstood relationships with Emperors Taizong and Gaozong.
So for you listening, I want you to think of history like a massive game of telephone. But it's played over 1,000 years by men who fundamentally, at their core, did not want a woman to have been in charge.
Right.
Every generation just whispers a new, more sinister exaggeration into the ear of the next. And today, we are tracing that call all the way back to the original source.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. So to do that, we have to start at the very beginning of her time in the palace. We need to look at the Taizong years.
Yes.
Because popular culture paints this era as an epic, sweeping romance between the great Emperor Taizong and the young, beautiful Wu Zetian.
Right, the soap opera version.
Exactly. But the reality is actually rooted in the brutal, pragmatic politics of the early Tang dynasty.
Yeah, the romanticization completely ignores the political vacuum of the time. I mean, you have to look at Emperor Gaozu. He founded the Tang dynasty, but he was overthrown by his own son, Li Shimian.
Who becomes Emperor Taizong.
Exactly. And this was the Xuanwei Gate incident. It was this incredibly bloody coup where Taizong literally ambushed and murdered his own brothers.
Wow.
Yeah, and forced his father to abdicate. So after a violent seizure of power like that, the new emperor has a massive legitimacy problem.
I would imagine so.
Gaozu's loyal old guard, the financial and military backers who actually built the dynasty, they were completely alienated.
Okay, so that brings us to Wu Zetian's father, Wu Shiyu.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't some high-born aristocrat, right?
No, not at all. He was a wealthy wood merchant.
Right, but he was an early financial supporter of the founding emperor, Gaozu.
Exactly.
So after the coup, men like Wu Shiyu were sidelined. They were sent out to the provinces as governors, and he essentially died of illness and grief shortly after Gaozu passed away.
Yeah, it was a huge blow to him.
So when Taizong brings the 14-year-old Wu Zetian into his harem as a fifth-rank talent, it isn't because he saw her across a crowded room and fell in love.
Oh, absolutely not. Taizong was making a calculated political gesture. Bring the daughter of a prominent, recently deceased Gaozu loyalist into the palace. It was a way of signaling to that alienated old guard that, hey, you still have a place in this new regime.
It's basically an olive branch to a fractured political base.
Precisely. It was a political marriage, totally stripped of any romantic underpinning.
Which explains why her career under Taizong was just so spectacularly unimpressive.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, despite her relatively high-born status compared to other concubines, she remained at the exact same fifth-rank level for 12 years.
12 years. No promotion.
It's like she was hired into the administration for public relations and then immediately shoved into a back office and ignored.
That is exactly what happened. We see almost no mention of her in the historical records during Taizong's reign, except for one incredibly famous anecdote.
Right, the story involving the wild horse named Lion Stallion.
Yes. And this horse story is universally cited to show her fierce nature, but it's often totally misinterpreted.
How so?
Well, the story goes that no one could tame this massive beast. And the teenage Wu Zetian steps forward and tells the emperor, I can do it. But she demands 3 tools, an iron whip, an iron mace, and a dagger.
Okay, that's intense.
That is, she states she will whip the horse. If it disobeys, she will smash its head with the mace, and if it still resists, she will cut its throat.
Wow. I mean, that is an incredibly hardcore statement from a teenager.
Right.
And supposedly, Taizong praised her spirit. But looking at the mechanics of the Tang court, that kind of ruthless display was probably the absolute last thing an emperor wanted in his private quarters.
Exactly. Taizong was an alpha male military conqueror. He spent his days dealing with warlords and generals in battlefields.
So when he retires to his harem...
He wasn't looking for a woman threatening to bludgeon a horse to death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He wanted submission, poetry, grace. Her display of iron will practically guaranteed she would be sidelined. She was just too intense.
So her fierce nature actually cemented her place in the background. But that background position became highly dangerous pretty soon, right? Because of this prophecy circulating the palace.
Oh, the prophecy, yes.
Yeah.
The rumor stated, quote, after 3 generations of Tang, a female named Wu will rule the empire.
Which, in a modern context, we might just laugh that off as palace gossip.
Right. But the Tang court viewed celestial mechanics and prophecy as tangible state intelligence. It was serious.
So Taizong consults his most famous astronomer and mathematician, Li Chunfeng.
He does. And Li Chunfeng didn't just confirm the prophecy. He actually told the emperor that the signs in the heavens indicated this woman was already inside the palace, and that in 40 years, she would systematically slaughter the Li family descendants.
Okay, so if you're the emperor, your immediate reaction has to be to purge the palace, right?
Oh yeah. Taizong wanted to launch a purge immediately. Execute anyone in the palace who fit the description. But Li Chunfeng actually argued against it.
Wait, he argued against killing the person destined to slaughter the royal family?
He did. He used this specific, chillingly fatalistic logic that was deeply respected at the time. He argued that this event was the will of heaven.
Okay.
So if the emperor killed this woman now, he would be defying cosmic fate. And heaven would simply retaliate by sending a younger, more ruthless usurper who would leave absolutely no survivors.
Oh, wow. So his logic is basically the devil you know.
Exactly. He said if you let her live, in 40 years she'll be an old woman, and her maternal instincts might make her more merciful to your descendants.
That is wild. So she survives based on this bizarre astrological calculation.
Yep.
But I was looking at this timeline, and it presents a massive logical gap for me.
What do you mean?
Well, if she is just a low-ranking, ignored concubine sitting in the background of a harem under the constant shadow of a deadly prophecy, how on earth does she get the launch pad to become the supreme ruler? Because custom dictated that when an emperor died, any concubine who hadn't borne him a child would be shaved and sent to a monastery for the rest of her life, which is exactly what happened to her.
It is exactly what happened. So the launch pad wasn't Taizong at all. Her entire trajectory fundamentally changes because of the next emperor, Gaozong.
Okay, so we're shifting eras here.
Right. To understand the mechanics of her ascent, we have to examine a deeply calculated political relationship that began in literally the most high-stakes environment imaginable.
Which was?
Taizong's sick room.
Ah, while Taizong was on his deathbed.
Exactly. Crown Prince Liji was constantly at his bedside, fulfilling his filial duties. And Wu Zetian, as a concubine, was assigned to serve the dying emperor.
Okay.
So they were thrust together into this intimate, high-stress environment, and that is where the illicit romance actually began.
We really need to reevaluate Liege here, because the historical record, which is heavily biased against Wu Zetian, often paints him as this weak, easily manipulated henpeck fool who just fell victim to a demonic seductress.
Right, the classic femme fatale narrative. But that narrative completely strips him of his agency. Think about the power dynamic. Li Zi was the crown prince. He was poised to inherit the most powerful empire on earth.
And she was a low-ranking concubine facing imminent exile to a convent.
Exactly. The power dynamic was entirely skewed in his favor. She could not have boldly seduced him without taking a suicidal risk.
Because if she made an advance and he rejected her...
She could be executed instantly for treason. I mean, going after the emperor's woman, huge taboo. For this relationship to begin, the crown prince had to have been an active initiating participant.
That makes total sense.
He made a deliberate choice to engage with his father's concubine.
He knew the risks and he took them anyway, but the rules of the dynasty still applied. Taizong dies, and Wu Zetian is shipped off to Ganye Temple to become a Buddhist nun.
Yes, shaved head and everything.
It seems like the end of the line, yet on the anniversary of Taizong's death, the new emperor Gaozong visits the temple to offer incense, and they see each other. And the records say they both wept.
They did. There is a profound emotional bond there. But bringing a nun, his father's former concubine, back into the imperial palace was politically explosive. He needed an excuse.
And the excuse was handed to him by his own wife.
Empress Wang.
Empress Wang. This is where the inner court becomes a literal battleground, because Empress Wang was rapidly losing the emperor's favor to another woman, Consort Zhao.
Right.
So, in an act of spectacular strategic blindness, Empress Wang decides to bring Wu Zetian back from the temple to use her as a shiny new distraction.
She basically thought, I'll use her to pull the emperor's attention away from Consort Zhao.
She essentially brought a tiger into her home to chase away a stray cat.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. It was a colossal miscalculation.
But if you're listening to this and wondering how someone at the pinnacle of power could make such a terrible mistake, you really have to look at the class dynamics of the Tang dynasty.
Oh, the class dynamics are everything here. Empress Wang hailed from the Taiwan Wang clan. That's one of the 5 great surnames.
The absolute apex of society.
Exactly. Those aristocratic families held lineages that predated the Tang dynasty by centuries. They literally viewed the imperial Li family as nouveau riche.
Wow.
Yeah. And Empress Wang carried this immense arrogance into her marriage. She played the domineering aristocratic route, like later in her life when she was locked in the cold palace and the emperor visited her.
Yeah.
She actually demanded he renamed her prison the Courtyard of Changed Hearts as a monument to his regret.
Wait, she was issuing haughty commands from a prison cell?
From a prison cell. She was that arrogant.
And Wu Zetian countered that upper-class arrogance with a masterful grassroots strategy.
She did.
The sources describe her utilizing a little bird persona. She acted deeply submissive, incredibly reliant on Gaozong, providing a comforting contrast to the imperious Empress Wang.
She made him feel like the protector.
Exactly. But beneath that submissive exterior, she was building a shadow bureaucracy. Because while Empress Wang ignored the servants, viewing them as completely beneath her notice, Wu Zetian was bribing, listening to, and protecting the palace maids and eunuchs.
She weaponized the invisible workforce.
Yeah.
By treating the lower-level staff with respect and rewarding them handsomely, she created an unparalleled intelligence network. She knew every conversation, every movement, every plot forming in the palace.
And with that network, she completely outmaneuvers Empress Wang. She gets both Wang and Consort Zhao deposed, and she takes the title of Empress for herself.
But she wins the inner court.
But this brings us to the most difficult part of her story, because her victory over Empress Wang is permanently chained to the darkest, most horrifying legend of Wu Zetian's life.
Right, the story of Princess Andingxi.
The story goes that to finally frame Empress Wang, Wu Zetian strangled her own infant daughter. The narrative claims Empress Wang visited the baby, and the moment she left, Wu Zetian smothered the child, pretended to discover the body with the emperor, and used his grief to destroy Wang.
It's a brutal story.
I was actually looking at the source texts for this, specifically the Zizi Tongjian, and the description reads like a horror movie script. It details her laughing with attendants to establish an alibi, crying performative tears. I mean, it is incredibly vivid.
It is vivid. But it is vivid because it is a literary fabrication.
Really? A complete fabrication?
Yes. When we analyze the historiography, the evolution of how this specific event was recorded, the timeline of the texts actually reveals the lie.
Walk me through that.
So if you look at the earliest records, specifically the Old Tang Book and the Tang Huiyao, these were compiled much closer to the actual events.
Okay.
The infant princess is recorded simply as having suffered a sudden death. There is zero mention of strangulation.
Really?
No mention of a murder plot, and absolutely no mention of a frame-up.
So it was just a tragic infant mortality, which unfortunately was very common in the ancient world.
Exactly.
So where do these cinematic details of murder come from? How does it get into the history books?
They appear centuries later. During the Song Dynasty, they were introduced heavily in the New Tang Book and Sima Guang's Zizi Tongjian. And we can actually prove this is a retroactive fabrication by looking for a smoking gun in the contemporary sources.
Okay, what's the smoking gun?
We find that proof in the writings of Luo Binwen.
Who was he?
He was a poet and a rebel who launched a massive military uprising against Zetian during her actual lifetime.
Oh, so he was a direct contemporary.
Yes. And to rally troops to his cause, he wrote this blistering, highly public, utterly insulting manifesto.
Okay.
He accused her of every conceivable crime. He called her a viper, a usurper. He accused her of poisoning her mother and murdering her brothers. He threw every single piece of political dirt he could find at her.
Let me guess. He never mentions her killing her own baby.
Exactly the point.
Yeah.
If she had murdered her infant, or even if there was just a persistent contemporary rumor that she had done so, Luo Binwang would have made it the centerpiece of his propaganda.
Right. It would have been the ultimate proof of her demonic character.
Exactly. The fact that his exhaustive list of insults omits the baby proves that the rumor did not exist during her lifetime. The historians of the Song dynasty invented it.
That is fascinating. And it's not just the baby, right? The same later historians accuse her of poisoning her own son, Crown Prince Li Hong.
Yes, another huge myth.
But when you cross-reference the actual court medical records and contemporary accounts, Li Hong died of a chronic illness, most likely tuberculosis.
Yeah.
In fact, Gaozong was actually actively preparing Wu Zetian to take over the government because his heir was too sick to rule. And Gaozong himself suffered from chronic, debilitating headaches that left him blind for days at a time.
He was incredibly unwell.
So she didn't need to murder her son to get power. The power was actively being handed to her out of pure administrative necessity.
Completely. And furthermore, later historians manipulated the concept of the two saints title.
Oh, I've seen that mentioned.
Yeah, the narrative claims that while Gaozong was alive, she usurped his power so aggressively that she forced the empire to call them the two saints, ruling as absolute equals and rendering Gaozong a helpless puppet.
But that's not true.
Now, modern archaeological evidence, we're talking analyzing stone carvings, steels, and official edicts from the era, shows the title two saints was only used informally inside the palace courtyard.
Oh, so it wasn't a state thing.
No. State documents and nationwide decrees still clearly recognized Emperor Gaozong as the sole supreme sovereign. She was not usurping his title on paper.
Which begs the question, if she was this competent administrator, why did historians sitting in libraries hundreds of years later deliberately invent these grotesque lies? Why turn her into a cartoonish baby killer?
Well, the answer lies in a rigid ideological shift. During the Song dynasty, a much stricter, more conservative interpretation of Confucianism took hold. Neo-Confucianism. This philosophy viewed the universe through a strict binary of yin and yang. The concept of a female ruler yin dominating yang was viewed not just as politically incorrect, but as a literal aberration against nature.
So they literally saw it as an inversion of the cosmic order.
Exactly. They viewed a woman on the throne with the same terror as the earth trying to swallow the sky.
Wow.
Therefore, they could not objectively record that she was a highly competent ruler who successfully managed a massive empire. To do so would validate the aberration.
Huh. They had to make her success the product of unparalleled evil.
Right. They weaponized history to protect the patriarchal social order. They retroactively altered the records to ensure her legacy was so stained with horror that no future woman would ever dare try to replicate her success.
And this is what we call the ideology of the female disaster.
Yes, the female disaster.
This character assassination by historians really obscures the actual political substance of her ascent. I mean, if she didn't seduce and murder her way to the top of the most powerful empire on Earth, how did she actually do it?
Well, this leads us to the reality of her reign, which was a calculated, brutal war against the Guanlong aristocracy.
This is arguably the most profound impact Wu Zetian had on Chinese history, isn't it?
Undoubtedly.
Because the Tang dynasty was not an absolute monarchy where the emperor's word was unquestioned law.
Not at all.
The foundation of the empire rested on the Guanlong group. Tell us about them.
So the Guanlong group was a tightly knit network of elite military and civil families. Their power dated back to the Western Wei dynasty over a century earlier.
Right.
They intermarried extensively, they protected their own interests, and they completely monopolized the highest levels of government and the military.
They were basically the kingmakers.
Exactly. They operated on the 9-rank system, which
Yeah.
essentially meant government appointments were handed out based on aristocratic pedigree rather than actual administrative skill.
Right, so even the legendary emperor Taizong was heavily constrained by them.
Oh, heavily. He couldn't implement policies without the Guanlong aristocrats signing off. They possessed a functional veto over the imperial throne.
And Emperor Gaozong deeply resented this limitation on his autocratic power.
Yes, he did. And this resentment formed the true bedrock of his alliance with Wu Zetian. They were not just husband and wife. They were co-conspirators against the entrenched elite.
Gaozong needed a weapon.
Exactly. He needed someone outside the aristocratic networks, someone completely ruthless, who possessed no loyalties to the old bloodlines, to do the dirty work of purging these powerful families.
And Wu Zetian, the wood merchant's daughter, was perfectly positioned to be that weapon.
She was the perfect outsider.
The turning point for this grand strategy actually centered around the debate to make Wu Zetian empress, right?
It did. The aristocratic ministers vehemently opposed her elevation. They knew she was Gaozong's tool to dismantle their power.
But then a veteran military general named Li Ji intervenes.
Yes.
He pulls Gaozong aside and delivers one of the most consequential lines in Tang history. He simply asks, "This is His Majesty's family business. Why ask outsiders?"
It's such a brilliant political maneuver.
Right.
By categorizing the appointment of the empress as a private household matter rather than a state affair, Li Ji provided the emperor with the crucial military backing he needed to bypass the aristocratic veto.
And with the military holding the line, Gaozong and Wu Zetian used the controversy as a wedge. They systematically purged the old guard.
It was a bloodbath for the elites. Ancient families were dismantled, powerful ministers were exiled, forced into suicide, or publicly executed. The Guanlong monopoly, which had dictated imperial politics for centuries, was finally broken.
But you know, if you smash a centuries-old power structure, you are left with a massive administrative vacuum.
Yes, you have thousands of empty desks in the government.
Right. You need a new class of bureaucrats to run a massive agrarian empire, and you need them to be loyal directly to the throne, not to an ancient bloodline.
So to solve this, Wu Zetian implemented her most brilliant, enduring policy. She weaponized the civil service examinations.
Now, the examination system existed prior to her reign, but it was deeply flawed, right?
Heavily biased. Aristocrats used their wealth and influence to ensure their sons passed, often by securing recommendations from high-ranking officials before the test even began.
So Wu Zetian recognized that to permanently replace the aristocracy, she had to change the currency of power from blood to merit.
Exactly. She massively expanded the examination system and instituted revolutionary structural changes to guarantee its fairness.
She invented blind grading.
Yes.
She ordered that the names of the test takers be covered up before the graders read the essays. So a grader wouldn't know if the essay belonged to a peasant from a distant province or the son of a wealthy minister in the capital.
Which is wild to think about. That procedural change is a cornerstone of modern standardized testing, and she implemented it over 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
Furthermore, she instituted the palace examination.
What was that?
The top candidates who passed the regional and ministerial exams were brought directly to the imperial palace, where she personally tested them.
Oh, brilliant. So this ensures their primary loyalty is to the sovereign who elevated them, completely bypassing the old system of wealthy patrons.
Right. And she also created the martial arts examination, opening up military leadership to commoners based entirely on physical skill, strategy, and merit, rather than aristocratic birthright.
It's like she created the ultimate blind audition for the government. It didn't matter what your last name was. If you could pass the rigorous testing on literature, statecraft, and policy, you were hired.
It was pure merit.
But she didn't stop at just hiring new people. She wanted to fundamentally rewrite the social hierarchy of the entire empire. She commissioned a new social register called the Record of Surnames.
This was a massive insult to the old guard. Previously, social registers ranked families based on their ancient bloodlines and historical prestige.
So like the Taiyuan Wang clan would be at the top.
Exactly, listed at the very top, regardless of what their current descendants were actually contributing to the state. But Wu Zetian's Record of Surnames obliterated that metric.
What did she replace it with?
She decreed that current official rank was the sole standard for social prestige.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She placed the Wu family and the Lai family at the absolute top and downgraded the old blue blood families entirely based on their current bureaucratic standing.
So she basically told the empire, your ancestors do not matter. The only thing that matters is how effectively you serve the state today.
Exactly. It was a profound humiliation for the old elite and a massive structural empowerment for the rising meritocratic class.
But here is the stark reality of politics. Breaking a centuries-old power structure and publicly humiliating the most powerful men in the empire creates a tremendous amount of incredibly wealthy, heavily armed enemies.
It does.
And to survive the inevitable backlash, especially after Gaozong died, and she officially declared her own dynasty, the Wuzhou dynasty. In 690 AD, she had to employ some pretty extreme, terrifying measures.
This ushers in the complex duality of her solo reign. We are looking at an era characterized simultaneously by elite political terror and widespread grassroots prosperity.
Right.
And the mechanisms she used to maintain control are straight out of a dystopian thriller.
Let's examine the logistics of that terror, specifically the copper mailbox.
Oh, the mailbox.
She places this massive four-sided copper box right in the middle of the capital city, Luoyang.
The copper mailbox was a stroke of tyrannical genius. It had different slots for different types of petitions, one for agricultural suggestions, one for grievances. But its primary, most devastating function was receiving anonymous tips about treason.
Right, and she decreed that absolutely anyone, regardless of their social standing, could accuse a high-ranking official of plotting against the state.
Anyone. The logistics of this are what make it so terrifying for the elite.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so if a poor, illiterate farmer from a province 1,000 miles away wanted to accuse a powerful regional governor of treason, the state would actually pay for that farmer's travel.
Wait, really? The state funded it?
Yes. The local authorities were legally mandated to put the accuser on a post horse, send them to the capital, house them in a state-run hotel, feed them, and grant them a direct audience with the intelligence apparatus.
That is insane.
And if the accusation proved false, the farmer wasn't punished. If it proved true, they were richly rewarded. It completely inverted the social order.
So governors and aristocrats suddenly realized their own servants, their cooks, their stable hands held the power of life and death over them?
Exactly. And to process this massive influx of intelligence, Zetian employed a specialized group known as the cruel officials.
Men like Lai Yunqin and Zhu Xing.
Yes. These were not administrators. They were sadistic interrogators who ran a vast, secret police force. They actually wrote manuals detailing specific, horrific torture techniques designed to extract confessions rapidly.
Oh, Lord.
The atmosphere of terror in the capital was pervasive. High officials would say tearful goodbyes to their families every morning before heading to the imperial court, entirely unsure if they would be arrested and tortured to death before sunset.
So if you're listening to this and wondering how a government functions when all its top executives are terrified of being tortured, you have to look at who is actually being targeted, because the traditional narrative presents her as a paranoid, bloodthirsty maniac striking out blindly.
Right.
But the data reveals a highly surgical operation.
Exactly. The secret police were aimed almost exclusively at the remnants of the Tang royal family, the Lai princes, and the resistant core of the old Guanlong aristocracy.
Okay, so it wasn't random.
Not at all. She was systematically, physically eliminating the only demographic capable of mustering the political legitimacy and military strength to challenge a new dynasty. It was a highly targeted purge.
And the ultimate cynicism of her strategy is what happens after the purge is complete.
Oh, this is the most Machiavellian part.
Once the aristocrats are broken, the Li princes are dead or exiled, and her throne is absolutely secure. She turns around and executes the cruel officials themselves.
Yes. She uses men like Lai Yongxin to clear the chessboard, and then she has Lai Yongxin publicly executed.
She blames him for the excesses of the terror.
Exactly. She appeases the public anger and presents herself as the benevolent sovereign restoring justice.
It is an unparalleled display of political compartmentalization.
It really is. And this brings us to the profound paradox of her reign. While the elite bureaucrats were sweating through their silk robes in absolute terror, the common people, the farmers, the merchants, the artisans, were experiencing an unprecedented era of stability and growth.
The data on this is undeniable. Under her rule, the population of the empire experienced a massive boom, growing from roughly 3.8 million registered households to 6.15 million households.
Which is astounding.
Right. Population growth in an agrarian empire is the ultimate metric of success. Families do not expand unless they have consistent access to food, stable borders, and confidence in the economic future.
Exactly.
So how did she actually achieve that?
She achieved it through highly pragmatic agricultural policies. She actively authored and distributed an agricultural manual across the empire, detailing advanced farming techniques, irrigation methods, and crop rotation.
She wrote an agricultural manual herself.
Well, sponsored and oversaw it, yes. But more importantly, she manipulated the mechanics of state taxation. She significantly reduced corvée labor.
What is corvée labor?
It's the unpaid mandatory labor peasants owed to the state for infrastructure projects. By reducing the time peasants spent building imperial roads or palaces, she allowed them to spend more time working their own land.
Oh, wow. And more time on the land meant larger agrarian surpluses, which directly translated to population growth and economic prosperity.
Exactly. It's a very sound economic policy. Furthermore, she was a brilliant judge of administrative talent.
Like who?
Well, she employed some of the most capable, righteous ministers in Chinese history, such as the legendary detective and statesman Direnji and the brilliant administrator Yao Cheng.
Right.
She allowed these men to govern effectively, shielding the broader economy from her political purges. These ministers laid the exact administrative groundwork that would eventually blossom into the famous Kaiyuan era.
The Golden Age.
Yes, the absolute golden age of the Tang dynasty under her grandson.
So she balances a secret police state with progressive economic reform. But to legitimize this balancing act, to justify a woman occupying the supreme dragon throne, she realized the traditional ideological frameworks were insufficient.
Yeah, Confucianism, which was the dominant political philosophy, had absolutely no linguistic or theoretical framework for a female emperor.
None. So she became a masterful ideological chameleon.
She really did.
When she was empress sharing power with Gaozong, she leaned heavily into Confucianism. She positioned herself as the wise, nurturing mother of the empire. She even wrote extensive treatises on proper female behavior to soothe the conservative establishment, assuring them she understood traditional roles even as she dictated state policy.
But then when she declares her own dynasty, the Wuzhou, Confucianism becomes a massive roadblock.
Right.
So she simply pivots to a different religion entirely.
She leverages Buddhism.
Yes, she deployed scholars to find, or perhaps creatively interpret and translate, a text known as the Great Cloud Sutra.
And what did that say?
She ordered this sutra to be copied and distributed to every province in the empire. The text conveniently prophesied that the reincarnation of the Maitreya Buddha, the future Buddha of immense compassion, would manifest in the body of a female monarch who would rule over a utopian, prosperous empire.
So she bypasses the patriarchal limitations of Confucian heaven entirely.
Exactly.
She appeals directly to a cosmic, gender-transcending Buddhist authority. She literally distributed state-sponsored pamphlets declaring herself a living Buddha.
It is the divine right of kings, customized entirely for a female ruler.
That's genius. And then as she aged and the realities of mortality set in, she shifts her ideological focus yet again.
Right. In her twilight years, she turned toward Taoism. She invested heavily in alchemy, mystic rituals, and the pursuit of extreme longevity.
So she seamlessly bent the three great ideological pillars of Chinese civilization, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, to serve her immediate political and personal needs at every distinct stage of her life.
She mastered them all. But even an emperor recognized as a living Buddha cannot defeat time.
No. And this brings us to her final years, the collapse of her dynasty, and the profound mystery she left carved in stone.
As she entered her 80s, failing health forced her to confront the foundational contradiction of her solo reign, the crisis of succession.
Right. She had declared the Wuzhou dynasty.
Yes. And to maintain that dynasty, tradition dictated she must pass the throne to her own paternal bloodline, which meant elevating her nephews, Wu Chengxi or Wu Sanzi.
But elevating her nephews required permanently disinheriting her own sons, the Li princes of the Tang dynasty.
Exactly.
If she chooses her nephews, her Wu dynasty survives, but her sons are doomed. If she chooses her sons, the Tang dynasty is restored, and her entire political revolution is undone.
It was an impossible choice. But the resolution to this dilemma came from her most trusted minister, Direnji.
Ah, Direnji again.
Yes, he understood that arguing pure politics with her was totally useless. Instead, he framed the argument around the most sacred, foundational element of Chinese identity.
Ancestor worship.
Ancestor worship. He approached her and asked a simple, devastating question. He asked, "Your Majesty, who is closer, an aunt or a mother?"
Oh, wow. It's brilliant. Direnji pointed out that if she passed the throne to her son, she would be worshipped in the imperial ancestral temple forever as the revered mother of the emperor. She would receive sacrifices and honor for eternity.
Right. But, he asked, have you ever heard of a nephew worshiping his aunt in the imperial ancestral temple?
The logic is inescapable.
The patriarchal system she had manipulated so masterfully contained one mechanism she could not override. A nephew's ultimate spiritual loyalty is to his own parents, his own paternal line.
So once she was dead, her nephews would inevitably demote her memory to elevate their own fathers.
Exactly. Only her sons would be bound by filial piety to honor her as an ancestor.
So to secure her eternal soul and her historical legacy, she had to recall her exiled son, Zetian, and name him crown prince.
She did, and in doing so, she consciously sealed the doom of her own Wu dynasty.
Her final years were deeply marked by isolation. As her veteran ministers passed away and her health declined, she began relying almost exclusively on her young, flamboyant favorites, the Zhang brothers.
Right, and they weren't just companions. They acted as her proxies. They controlled all access to the emperor.
Which bypassed the established bureaucracy entirely.
And that deeply alarmed both the Wu family faction and the restored Li family faction. The instability caused by the Zhang brothers became the tipping point.
Which culminated in the Shenlong coup in the year 705.
Yes, a coalition of top ministers and imperial guards stormed her palace. They executed the Zhang brothers in the corridor right outside her chambers.
Wow.
And they forced the 82-year-old Wu Zetian, who was bedridden, to formally abdicate the throne to her son. The Tang dynasty was instantly restored.
And she passed away shortly after the coup.
She did. Her death marks the end of an unprecedented era. But she left us with one final, brilliant enigma.
The unmarked stele.
Yes. She was buried alongside Emperor Gozong at the Conling Mausoleum. Now, the custom for a deceased emperor is to have a massive stele, a giant stone monument erected at their tomb, heavily carved with thousands of characters detailing their glorious achievements, their military victories, and their moral virtues.
But Wu Zetian's stele is completely blank.
Totally blank. A massive, imposing block of stone standing there for over 1,000 years without a single word written on it.
Which is wild, and this unmarked stele remains the subject of intense historical debate. Why is it blank?
Well, many historians argue it was a political compromise.
How so?
Her son, Emperor Zongzong, had just overthrown her. He was deeply conflicted. How does a filial son evaluate a mother who usurped his family's dynasty, purged his relatives, but also vastly expanded the empire's borders and ruled with undeniable brilliance?
Yeah, that's a tough brief to write.
Right. Perhaps the court factions simply could not agree on a text that balanced her atrocities with her achievements, so they just left it blank by default.
While the political compromise theory makes logistical sense, I prefer the alternative. I like to think the blank stele was her ultimate, deliberate stroke of genius.
I agree.
It's as if she authored the most controversial, genre-defying, brilliant novel in history and then deliberately left the last page completely blank.
Yes.
She recognized that her life was too complex, her methods too ruthless, and her achievements too vast to be neatly summarized by standard Confucian praise or condemnation.
By leaving the stele blank, she refused to let the men who came after her dictate her legacy. She left the stone bare, forcing the sheer weight of history to judge her on its own terms.
It is a profoundly confident statement to the future. It forces every subsequent generation, right up to the present day, to grapple with the contradictions of her reign without the comfort of a predefined narrative.
It really does.
So let's summarize the journey we've taken today. We've seen how Wu Zetian wasn't just the murderous, cartoonish caricature drawn by later historians protecting a patriarchal ideology.
No, not at all.
Nor was she merely the lucky favorite of a passive emperor. She was a master strategist operating in an incredibly dangerous political vacuum. She systematically destroyed an ancient, entrenched aristocracy.
She reshaped the very concept of meritocracy in China by weaponizing the civil service exams.
She fueled massive economic and demographic growth through pragmatic agricultural policy, and she bent the major ideologies of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism entirely to her will to legitimize her unprecedented power.
If you are listening to this today, whether you're navigating your own complex world, analyzing modern political narratives, or managing organizational structures, Wu Zetian's story serves as a critical reminder.
What's the takeaway?
The narratives handed down to us, the accepted historical facts, are often written by the victors, or in a real case, by the men who felt profoundly threatened by her very existence.
Right.
To understand the actual truth of any complex situation, you have to look past the assigned labels. Look past the prevailing propaganda and examine the underlying mechanisms of power, logistics, and causality.
And that brings us to one final provocative thought to mull over as we close. We look closely at her reign of terror, the secret police, the targeted purges, and it undeniably stains her legacy.
It does.
But consider this. If Wu Zetian had been born a man, if a male emperor had performed the exact same ruthless purges against a rebellious aristocracy and achieved the exact same unprecedented economic prosperity and border expansion, Would he be labeled a bloodthirsty tyrant?
That is the big question.
Or would he simply be remembered as one of China's greatest, most decisive state builders? Think about Taizong executing his own brothers to seize power.
Yeah, his legacy is perfectly intact.
Did her gender necessitate the very ruthlessness that she is condemned for today,
Yep.
simply as a requirement to survive in a room that fundamentally rejected her right to even exist?
Something to think about.
It is the ultimate question of her reign, and one that the Blank Steel invites you to keep asking. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.